So what is velocity banking? What it is a more financially efficient way to use your current income to maximize your cash flow, create leverage, and help you pay off your debts in a fraction of the time using tools available at the bank. And these are tools that anybody can use. You just need to know how to use them. A critical point here, guys, is everything that you know about the bank, you learned from the bank through their messaging, through their advertising, whatever they're putting out there. That's what you learn. And there is a certain way that the banks would like for you to think and like for you to act. And here's the typical banking model that we are all taught from a very young age. And really, as we do this illustration today, guys, to run you through the scenario here, we're going to use the numbers of the average American household in this country. So the average American household is bringing in about 60 grand a year. So over 12 months, that would be 5 grand of income coming into the household every single month. And once that money comes in, it goes into that checking and savings account, and right away you start chopping up that pie, right? Out of the 5 grand, you got a $1,200 mortgage payment, $600 car payment, you got a $600 credit card payment. You got about $1,200 there for your lifestyle. Obviously, that number is going to be different for most people. But and also you got about $1,400 there going into different savings vehicles. Whether it's your 401k at your job, maybe you have an IRA you're putting some money into, and then whatever's left over there kind of goes into your savings for you to kind of hold on to at the end. So that's the typical average American household and kind of what they do with their money. And let's draw this out. So what we have here is we have a mortgage, right? And that is a loan. Right, you have a loan on that property in the form of it is a mortgage, and this particular property is a $200,000 property. It's got a $1,200 mortgage payment, and this interest rate is 6% interest on this loan. We also have a car payment here, and that is also a loan. The other thing that we have here is we have lines. We have that credit card there, and that is a line of credit. And on this particular credit card, we've racked up a little bit of debt. So we got a 15K limit on this card. We got 12 grand already racked up on there. And we got a $600 payment on that card. And we have a 21% interest rate, which is the average interest rate for credit cards in this country. So this is the typical American household here. And the first thing we notice is that you got $5,000 going into the household and $5,000 going out. Very, very typical to see the average household breaking even each and every single month. But what we need to do now here is we need to take a deeper look at this model, because we see here that we got some loans and we also have some lines. So what is the difference there, right? What is the difference between a line and a loan? And these are the two primary products that the banks offer to consumers. So what is a loan? And this is the product that the banks most readily offer. Most of you guys have them right now, student loans, mortgages. So what is a loan? A loan is a one-way lending instrument, typically with a fixed monthly installment payment, and each payment is going to consist of principal and interest, and it's going to be amortized interest on the loan. Now, the problem with a loan is that the principal is not liquid. You don't have access to your money. And why? Because the banks have it, right? You just sent it to the bank. And now that they have it, they get to leverage your money. And this is why the banks always have the nicest buildings in town. They have everybody's money. So they get all the leverage. And leverage is so, so, so powerful. Now, why is this a problem? Well, because it's your money. And if anyone's going to be leveraging your money, shouldn't it be you? Now, is it possible for you to create leverage with your money like the banks? The answer is yes. We just can't do it with loans. So what is a line of credit? Lines are a two-way lending instrument, okay? They are revolving. Think about your credit card. If you have a $10,000 balance on that credit card and you send that credit card $2,000, right? Now you have $2,000 worth of available credit that you can use in the line. So you can use it again. It's a revolving line. The principal, and the beauty of that is that the principal is liquid in the form of leverage in that line. When you send money to a line of credit, you still have access to that money in the form of leverage in the line. And the great thing about these lines of credit is that they are simple interest versus amortized. And since we're young, we're taught that lines of credit, credit cards are bad. We're taught that you don't want to get those credit cards because they're going to bankrupt you. The bottom line is that a line of credit is a tool. And just like fire, which is a great tool, It can be dangerous, right? Fire is one of the greatest tools known to man. We use it to cook. We use it to heat our homes. I live here in Minnesota. We definitely use fire to stay warm. But obviously, if you use it wrong, it can be dangerous. So, the same thing goes for a line of credit. You just need to know how to use lines of credit correctly. Most people out there use lines for liabilities. And a critical point to make is that lines of credit are for emergencies and for assets. That's it. So let's get back to our average American household scenario here, and let's talk a little bit more about these loans. Obviously, now that we know that these loans are amortized, they're one way, the principal is not liquid, the lines, it's simple interest, and the principal is liquid through the fact that the line is revolving. And let's talk a little bit more about this, right? We're taught to think about the interest rate. So on the simple interest line, we see a 21% interest rate. And over here on the amortized loan, we see a 6% interest rate, right? So now, but what does that mean, right? Because again, this is simple interest versus amortized interest. And I got a question for you. Would you rather pay 6% interest rate, or would you rather pay a 21% interest rate? And most people are obviously just going to simply dive on the 6. And the reason why is because the number is smaller, right? Simply because the number is smaller, they'll dive on the 6. But does that smaller number mean that the interest you pay is actually going to be less? A critical point here, lines versus loans. Lines have simple interest. Loans have amortized interest. So what is the difference between simple interest and amortized interest? Well, for starters, they are two completely different systems used to calculate interest. Think about the difference here between Fahrenheit and Celsius. Obviously, they're both used to calculate temperature, but 1 degree Celsius is actually hotter than 32 degrees Fahrenheit, right? Even though the number is smaller, it's actually hotter than the larger number, right? Amortized interest is much more expensive. So think about simple interest as Fahrenheit and amortized interest as Celsius. Let me show you, let's take a deeper look at this mortgage here and really show you what amortized interest actually looks like. Typically when you take out a 30-year mortgage, you're going to get an amortization table that looks something like this, where you're going to see a chart and it's going to show you how your payments are going to pan out. And, you got this $1,200 per month payment at the beginning of your mortgage. You're going to pay a very high amount of that payment in interest. As a matter of fact, in this particular mortgage, at $200,000 mortgage at 6%, on the very first payment of $1,200, $1,000 of that payment is actually interest going to the banks, and only $200 is actually affecting the principal. And, the crazy thing about mortgages is that most people actually never pay off their mortgage. Most people out there actually refinance their mortgage every 5 to 7 years. And what that does, if you look at the graph here, most people refinance, and what it does is it resets the amortization, bringing you back to payment number 1, where you're paying such a high percentage here of interest out of that total payment. Bottom line, guys, is with this particular mortgage, in the first 48 months, in the first 4 years of this mortgage, you're going to make $57,000 worth of payments, right? $1,200 a month. You're going to make $57,000 worth of payments, and you're only going to reduce the principal on this mortgage by $13,000. And $44,000 of that is going to go straight to the bank in interest, okay? And I'll tell you, even if you were lucky enough to actually pay off this mortgage over 30 years, you would actually end up paying over $231,000 in interest right over to the big bank on this mortgage. Now, you might be thinking right now, whoa, wait a second, Mike, is that actually accurate? Let me go ahead and share my screen real quick, because some of you guys might want to call my bluff on that. Like, Mike, is that actually true? So what I did is I simply went over here to Google and I just typed in mortgage amortization calculator, and it brought me here. I actually selected this one right here, number 3, mortgagecalculator.org. And so let's just run the numbers on this. You can double check my math yourself. And let's just punch it in here with the $200,000 purchase price. Okay. And the 6% interest rate, okay? And it's going to show us here, it filled it in automatically for me. It shows us here a payment of about $1,199, and obviously I called it $1,200 for our example just to keep the slide as clean as possible. But so I'm obviously rounding, but it's showing us a payment of $1,199. So 99. Hopefully you can forgive me the 90 cents. But let's check out what this mortgage actually looks like. Let's create the amortization schedule for what it's going to look like as you pay back this mortgage. And here it is. What this shows us here is that on your very first payment, you're sending in roughly that $1,200, and again, only $200 is affecting the principal, and $1,000 is going in straight interest to the bank. As a matter of fact, after your first year, look at these numbers, guys. You're going to send in about $14,400 in that first year in payments, and only knock the principal balance down by $2,400 in that first year out of $14,400. It's an insane, incredible amount of interest. And let's go all the way to year 4. We talked about 48 months. Okay. After 48 months, you have knocked your principal down to 186. Okay. From the 200,000. So we're looking at about 13 grand, just like I told you, in principal reduction on this particular mortgage after 48 months. It's an insane amount of interest going right to the banks. So now that you know the difference between a line and a loan and how brutal amortized interest really is, let's take the next step here and share with you the number one wealthy mindset shift that you need to make if you truly want to get control of your finances and navigate this rigged system. So first off, who rigged the system? Well, that's your friends over at the big banks, corporations, and the government, of course. So why? Why would they rig the system? Well, to make money, of course. The unfortunate truth, guys, is that the government and the big banks have been grooming you since you were a kid to get used to giving them your money. Think about this. Since you were a kid, you've heard that you need to go to school, get good grades, get a degree so you can get a good job. You've been told that the only two things that are certain in life are death and taxes. You're also told that you don't want to take risks out there and you really just want to play it safe in life. And really what we call this, guys, is old school mentality. This language forces you down a certain path in which you're going to live your life, and you begin to develop what we call the employee mindset. And what's the problem with the employee mindset? The problem is that we only learn how to exchange time for money. We only learn how to live on a cash system. We're taught that we want to pay cash for everything, and we're taught to use cash as currency. And above all else, we relentlessly focus on accumulating cash. Think about it. We spend most of our lives chasing a dollar. And the critical problem with the employee mindset is that there is no leverage. The minute that you stop exchanging hours for dollars at your job or accumulating cash, the dollars are going to stop coming in. Now, do wealthy folks want to accumulate cash? Well, yes, right? Of course they do. But that is not their focus. To the wealthy, cash accumulation is a byproduct. The two things that wealthy folks focus on creating relentlessly, which is cash flow and leverage. Now, what is cash flow? Simply put, guys, cash flow is income, your income minus your expenses. Whatever you have left over, that is your cash flow. It's the money that you have left over after all of your bills are paid. The money that's actually for you. We're taught to focus on what we make, the gross income, our annual salary or hourly pay, not so much about how much we actually keep. And this is the mindset shift that we really need to make here. You see, wealthy people think differently. They have a wealthy mindset. Wealthy mindset individuals are not interested in exchanging time for money. Wealthy mindset individuals are not interested in using cash as currency. Wealthy people use cash as velocity to pay off their debts, reduce interest payments, and create additional leverage. They create leverage in lines of credit. They then use that leverage as currency to pay for their lifestyle, their monthly expenses, and since the lines are simple interest, the wealthy leverage them to pay off their expensive amortized loans much, much quicker. You see, wealthy mindset individuals are not interested in sending their extra cash to the loans. Wealthy mindset individuals are not interested in using savings accounts and know that when they send their money from the bank or send it from a savings or checking account, that it's not very effective at reducing the debt. So what do the wealthy do? And what would the wealthy do with this average American household scenario? And now that you know the difference between a line and a loan, and the importance of cash flow and the power of leverage. Let me show you this powerful velocity banking strategy so you can get this into your life as soon as possible. Now remember that the two most important things that wealthy folks focus on creating relentlessly are cash flow and leverage. So that's exactly where we're going to start. We need to create some cash flow here because right now we don't have any. We got $5,000 going in and $5,000 going out. There's no cash flow. There's nothing left over. So what we need to do is reorganize the way that we're using our income. And what wealthy people would do in this scenario is think, okay, how can we create some leverage? Where can we create some leverage here? And where we can do it is in the line of credit. So what the wealthy are going to do is they're going to take this income of $5,000 and they're going to start taking all of it and sending it to the line of credit, all $5,000 of it. And watch what this does to our pie here, because we know that if we chop up that pie, we're not going to impact the debt and really knock down the principal. By sending all $5,000 to the line, what this does is this creates cash flow, because we no longer have to account for that $600 credit card payment because we're sending all of our income directly to that line of credit. So we don't have to account for it. We can add that rate to our cash flow. Also, when it comes to the savings accounts, the 401k at your job, if you're buried in this kind of amortized debt, whatever interest you're earning in that 401k, which is probably less than inflation itself, so it's probably losing money, but it's definitely earning much less than what you're actually paying in interest on that amortized mortgage. So we don't want to use those for now. And also that employee mindset savings account, we already know that just gives all the leverage to the banks, and the banks really don't pay very good interest on savings account. Most of them are a fraction of a percent. So we're not going to put our money there anymore while we're in this state of emergency and need to get rid of this debt. So we're going to take that $1,400 there and we're going to put that directly into our cash flow. And many of you guys are like, hold on, wait a second, Mike, I need to have some cash on hand for an emergency. And the answer is yes, right? You do need to have funds available that are liquid to you. Yes, I understand that, but there are other vehicles that you can use that will earn a higher rate of return than a savings account at a bank. So in this scenario, we're taking it, we're going to put it into our cash flow. And what that does here is that changes our expenses. So now what we have here is we have $5,000 of income coming in and $3,000 of income going out in expenses and $2,000 worth of cash flow. And let's play this strategy out and show you what this does when you start living this velocity banking strategy. So let's take a deeper look at this line of credit. So we got this $15,000 line of credit. We already have a $13,000 balance on this particular line. And month one is going to come rolling in, and we're going to take that $5,000 and we're going to send it all directly to the line of credit, knocking that balance down from $13,000 down to $8,000. Then we got $3,000 going out for our expenses. We're going to pay the mortgage, transfer it to the line. We're going to pay for our lifestyle. We're going to pay the car payment, leveraging this line of credit. All of your expenses are going to go on the line. So we got $5,000 going in, dropping us to $8,000, and then $3,000 up, bringing us back up to $11,000. And we're just going to keep playing this out every single month where you got $5,000 going in, $3,000 going out, $5,000 going in, $3,000 going out. And you're going to keep playing this out. And it's really simple math here. When you look at, $13,000 worth of a balance, and you can see that it's going down every single month by our cash flow. So it's going down by $2,000 every single month. And so when you follow this chart, what this is going to show us is that this entire credit card is going to be paid off in just over 6 months using this velocity banking strategy. And again, you might be thinking, well, Mike, what about an emergency? What if the car breaks down and I need to get new tires on the car? Well, the great news is that you're covered. You have a $15,000 line of credit. And whenever that happens in that 6 months, you have available leverage in that line that you can use. Okay. Now, what's the next step here? Now that the line of credit is paid off, what's the next step? Now, you remember that expensive amortized mortgage that we have here? Let's go ahead and take a chunk of that amortized debt and move it over to the simple interest line of credit, essentially transforming the interest that you were paying on that debt and making it much, much easier for you to pay off. We're going to go ahead and use one of those balance transfer checks, and we're going to write a $13,000 balance transfer check, principal only, and send it directly to the mortgage. Okay, so we're going to transfer $13,000 of amortized debt over to your simple interest line of credit. And then we're going to implement the same velocity banking strategy that we used before, where you got the $5,000 of your income going in, and then you put your $3,000 expenses on the line. 5,000 in, 3,000 out. And every single month, it's going to go down by your cash flow. And in this scenario, our cash flow is $2,000. So it's going down by $2,000 every month. So what we've been able to do here is we've been able to pay this balance down yet again in just over 6 months. And we've reduced our mortgage principal by $13,000. Okay? And the cool thing about a simple interest line of credit, because you might be thinking, well, Mike, if I have a balance on this line of credit, if it's not zero interest, I'm going to pay interest on that. And that's true, right? And you can run the numbers on this, do your own due diligence. But if you take a $13,000 balance and you multiply it by 0.21, it's going to give you a number. Take that number, divide it by 12 months, right? And it's going to give you about a $200 or so monthly interest payment on that line. And again, the balance isn't going to be $13,000 every single month. It's going down by $2,000. So it's actually going to be less than that, but you're going to roughly pay about $1,300 in interest. And I am shooting that high. Now, here's what's significant and profound about this is that we were able to reduce our mortgage principal by $13,000 within 6.5 months and only pay $1,300 in interest, using the simple interest line. To get the same $13,000 in principal reduction on this mortgage, just making our payments, it took us 4 years of time currency, and we also had to pay $44,000 worth of interest to get that same level of principal reduction. Bottom line, guys, is this is very profound and really it's very, very exciting to share it. And by simply rinsing and repeating this process every 6 months, you will pay off this 30-year mortgage, the car, and the credit card debt in about 6 years. And this is all without refinancing and without increasing your income. Again, this scenario is based on everything staying the same. Simply leveraging a strategy and using velocity banking and truly allowing you to finally win the banking game and get ahead financially. I love this quote by Bob Hope. The bank is a place that will lend you money if you can prove that you don't need it. And the great news about the average American household after the last 6 years is that, as you can see, everything's looking pretty good. The cool thing about not having a mortgage is that you no longer have a mortgage payment. And so we can go ahead and add that to our cash flow. The great thing about 6 years later is that car note got paid off and we can add that $600 to our cash flow, bringing us up to $3,800 per month in cash flow. And notice the $1,200 going out is your lifestyle. During this whole thing, we did not change your lifestyle. That same $1,200, that stayed the same the entire time. And we were able to do this by simply reorganizing and maximizing the way we're using our current income. At this point, we have a property now. This is a $200,000 leverageable asset that you own in your property with zero mortgage. And we also have a credit card here with a $25,000 line of credit. You see, the great thing, just like Bob says, is that, now the average American household here has perfect credit. And banks, tend to reward this type of activity. I guarantee you that a bank is never going to say, hey, you're a really good saver. You got a bunch of money in your savings account there. We're going to go ahead and give you, $10,000. It doesn't work like that. They don't reward that type of behavior. Banks reward you when you pay them back. When you pay them back and you pay them back on time, they reward you. So in this scenario, it's easy to see that the bank could easily increase the limit of your credit card from $15,000 up to $25,000 or higher. In this scenario, we're going to give you another $10,000 in additional leverage. That's very exciting. So at this point, guys, life is good for the average American household. Now, some people might be content to stop right here with being debt-free. Now, the critical problem with that is that we're still exchanging hours for dollars. What if your hours get reduced? What if you get laid off? What if something happens to your income? What we know about corporate America is that any moment, for any reason, the boss could let you go. So what would the wealthy do in this situation? Remember, guys, lines of credit are for emergencies and assets. And now, for the average American household, there's no more emergencies. They're debt free. Let's use the leverage in the line of credit to accumulate additional cash flow producing assets. At the beginning of this webinar, guys, I told you that I would show you how you can go from living paycheck to paycheck to becoming completely debt-free and owning 7 rental properties paid off free and clear inside of a decade. So you can achieve financial independence and build a legacy for your family. So let's go ahead and leverage this line of credit and use the velocity banking strategy to build financial independence. So this is where we're going to take and use a couple of real estate investing strategies to really do this. First things first, what we're going to do is we're going to use this line of credit and we're going to write a $20,000 check and we're going to purchase one of these, a single family rental property. The market value on this property is $120,000, leaving us with a $100,000 mortgage, and we like each door to cash flow about $400 per month. So that's going to add $400 to our cash flow, bringing us up to $4,200 per month in cash flow. And we're going to immediately start using the velocity banking strategy on this mortgage. And as we know, every month with the money going in and the money going out, it's going to go down by our cash flow number every single month. So this 20 grand is going to get paid off in about 5 months. Then we're going to go ahead and rinse and repeat that process. And again, going down every single month by our cash flow, the $4,200 every month. By repeating this process, you are going to pay off this particular rental property in about 2 years. And obviously the great thing about paying off the mortgage is that you no longer have a mortgage payment to worry about. Obviously we got a renter in there, but we no longer have a mortgage. So that's going to increase your cash flow. And the average rents in this country are over $1,000 per month. So that's going to bring our cash flow from $400 up to about $1,000 per month, bringing our total cash flow now up to about $4,800 per month in cash flow. So what's the next step here and how can we really take this to the next level? Because here we are, we're at about year 7, 8-ish in our scenario, and now we have this rental property paid off free and clear. So the next step here is how can we create more leverage? Well, now you have this leverageable asset there in the rental property that has a 120 plus $1,000 value in the market. As we know, real estate properties tend to go up in value. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this property and you're going to walk into the bank and the loan officer is going to walk up to you and say, hey, let me give you a mortgage for that loan so you can have some cash. You're going to say, nope. What I want is I want to get a HELOC. Right? I want to get a home equity line of credit. And so now that we have this big $120,000 HELOC, what are we going to do with that? How many $20,000 checks can we write with a $120,000 HELOC? Well, we can go ahead and we can write 6 of those. And let's assume the same numbers as the original rental with the market value at $120,000 with the $20K down payment, leaving us with a $100K mortgage on each of these 6 properties, and you're gaining $400 in cash flow on each of these rentals. So the same numbers as the first property. And what that's going to do for us is that's actually going to add $2,400 directly to your cash flow. Bringing you from $4,800 all the way up to $7,200 per month in cash flow. And let's go ahead and play this out. You see, now we're not messing with the small 25K line of credit anymore. That has a zero balance. That is out of here. Now we're using this new $120,000 line of credit. And we're going to start using velocity banking. And what we know is that this is going to go down by our cash flow each and every month going in here. So you got $7,200 worth of principal reduction happening every single month. And over time, if you play this out, it's going to take you roughly about 16 months to go ahead and sweep down the 120 grand that you have on this HELOC. It'll take you about 16 months to sweep that down using the velocity banking strategy. And then you go ahead and rinse and repeat. Keep in mind as well, a renter is in that property making a payment on that principal every single month as well on top of what you're putting into it with your cash flow. So sweep the HELOC down at about 16 months and repeat that process. And you will literally pay off these 6 rental properties. If you run the numbers on this, you'll pay off these 6 rental properties in about 3 years' time. And that's going to give you a total of 7 rental properties paid off free and clear. And again, the beauty of not having a mortgage on all those rentals is that increases your cash flow by an additional $600 per property, so that adds another 36 on top of our 72, bringing us to $10,800 per month in positive cash flow. And this is without changing your spending habits, right? At no point in this do we change your lifestyle. without earning any additional income, simply using your money better and using a financial strategy that we call velocity banking. And again, to finalize, guys, using this velocity banking strategy, we've been able to create a monthly cash flow of $10,800 per month, which is really exciting. But there's also a ton of additional benefits to owning and controlling real estate. The key benefit here is that in this scenario, you have over $1 million in leverageable assets between your $200,000 property and the seven $120,000 rental properties that you own free and clear. That's all leverageable assets. You can get a ton of lines of credit on that to go purchase more cash flowing rental property. Leverage creates more leverage. You also get incredible tax advantages for owning and controlling real estate. And this is truly a much more secure cash flow retirement. Again, versus just stuffing your money into a 401k and hoping that it goes up in value. The fear is that the market's going to crash and you're going to lose all your value in that account, just like it did in 2008. The thing about rental real estate is that even if the property value goes down in the short term, the renter still has to pay the rent, right? That is still the most important payment each and every month to the person living in your property. So as long as you have cash flow, that's what's going to give you security regardless of the market or the economy. And of course, you're building a real estate portfolio and really building a legacy and something that's truly tangible and that you could pass on down to your family for generations. My good friend Mitch Nelson says that when knowledge increases, behavior changes. And now that we've increased your knowledge, you can change your financial behavior to save thousands of dollars in interest, maximize your cash flow, and create massive leverage using the velocity banking strategy.